When you're dating someone, there are some do's and there are some don'ts. In today's video, I'm going to focus on the don'ts. This is Linda G. Robert. I'm your Back in the Groove Again coach, and I'm here to help you live your best life now. So let's talk about some don'ts. There are some things that are generally considered to be off limits or really inappropriate when you're on a date. And here are some definite things that you're going to want to avoid. The first thing you want to avoid is talking about your ex. It's important to focus on the present moment, focus on your date, and not your past relationships. Bringing up your ex can really make your date feel uncomfortable or insecure. I'm not saying that you can't talk about your ex at any time in your relationship. No, at some point, you will both talk about your exes. But the first few days, even the first few months, you don't want to focus on your ex at all. Talk about your ex with your friends. Talk about your ex with your male friends or your girlfriends, or maybe even your mom if you want to. But don't talk about your ex with your date. You want to focus on her. You want to focus on the very present moment. Another thing to avoid, and this is an obvious one, but I'm putting it out there anyways. Avoid being rude or disrespectful, right? Being rude or disrespectful to your date or even to other people around you is a major turnoff. It's important to be polite and respectful at all times. I'll give you an example. Many years ago, I was at the movies with a date. And he was really polite to me. We had a great time. And then he was even rude to the people in front of us at the movie theater. And that was an immediate turnoff. And I just couldn't find the respect for him afterwards. It just was an immediate red flag. So you don't want to be rude. You don't want to be disrespectful towards your date, of course, and any other people that are around you. One more tip, and I've got a few other tips for you too. You don't want to be on your phone. Checking your phone constantly during a date is not only rude, but it also sends her a message that you're not here, you're not present, and that she's not important. I remember this was a few months ago. I was in the city of Mexico, and there was a couple sitting right next to me, and they were both on their phones at all times. Now, I thought it was a little bit strange. Maybe they were married. Doesn't matter. So when one wasn't on their phone, the other one was on their phone. And I never really saw them talk a lot during that time. I had another example. This was many years ago as well. I was on a date with a man who actually had three phones with him, and I thought it was the most funniest thing. My phone was away, but he had a couple of phones on the table, and he also had another phone in his pocket. And of course, one would call and he would answer that one. They were all business types of phones, but I didn't care. I didn't care if they were business phones or not. There's a certain time to do business and another time that it's not. We were on a date, we were enjoying ourselves, having dinner and so on. But the minute he picked up that phone and kept talking on the phone, it was a turnoff. I decided to not even pursue that relationship after that. It was one date, but one date too many. So, of course, another tip, in a sense, it's related to the previous one, but not exactly. It's you want to avoid talking only about yourself, right? A date is a two-way conversation. It's not a monologue. So don't hog the conversation. Make sure you ask, questions about your date. Ask her questions. Show her that you're really interested in. If you talk all the time, it's really boring. There's nothing wrong with talking, but ask her about her. Every now and then, you kind of zip it up and allow her to talk because women like talking as much as men do, right? Of course we do. But we also know that when we're on a date, it's a two-way thing. You wouldn't want to just listen to the woman talk all the time either. So most women don't do that, but if you are a woman listening to this, Give your date a chance to chat. Absolutely. All right. Another tip is to avoid controversial or sensitive topics. These are topics that maybe once you get to know the person, you might want to ask her opinion about what's happening, in the world or what's happening in politics. And then you'll find out if the person is interested in it or not. But you want to avoid topics that could bring up arguments about something, or maybe you are curious about somebody's opinion, and there's nothing wrong with asking some questions about their opinion. For example, you could say something like, have you heard what's happening in the news lately? The prime minister is talking about this. What do you think about that? Just to kind of get her feel about what she thinks about subjects that might be important to you. There's nothing wrong with that. But for example, there are certain topics, and I don't want to tell you which topics I find controversial. I think you're going to have to start paying attention to who avoids these types of conversations. For example, there are conversations that nobody wants to talk about, and you wouldn't even talk about those things. For example, you don't normally want to talk about any religious thing, any political thing during a date. These are topics that could be really sensitive, could be controversial in some cases. You don't want to approach those type of subjects. One more tip is to not be pushy. Don't be too aggressive. It's really important to be respectful, to respect your date's boundaries, and to avoid being too pushy, to avoid being too aggressive. Don't pressure your date into doing anything that they're not comfortable with doing. And don't assume that just because you're on a date, that your date is obligated to do anything. Now, this is it's a huge discussion these days. Just because she said, okay, pay the meal, doesn't mean anything else will occur after that. Right? So these are really sensitive topics, of course, but by being overly aggressive, your date is automatically going to go, right? No way. I said no, and I expect you to respect my no. Because if you're pushing too much, she is going to get upset. Absolutely will get upset at any time, not just while you're having dinner, for example. After dinner, if you're still too pushy, it's a turnoff. It's a turnoff. So you don't want to go there. One last tip for you, and this is for men and for women, of course, as well. You don't want to drink too much. Drinking too much on a date can be a major turnoff, and it can impair, of course, your judgment, your ability to communicate effectively. You want to limit your alcohol intake to maybe one drink, maybe two. You need to know what your limit is. You want to be mindful of how much you're drinking. So, for example, I know that if I have 2 wine glasses, I am starting to feel it. I know that from experience. I know if I have more than 2 wine glasses, I can get a little bit more loud, and I can get giddy, and I can get, you get the picture. If you know this about you, limit your alcohol intake. This is for women, of course, and this is for men. I wouldn't want to be on a date with somebody who is drunk, or even meets me drunk. Never mind has extra drinks. If the person that I'm meeting is already intoxicated, is already high on something, no, it's not going to work. It's a really big turnoff. And if they're not, and they just keep drinking one after another, for me, because I don't drink a lot, that would be a red flag, and it would be a turnoff right away. So be mindful of these kind of things. Remember, a date is an opportunity to get to know someone. And I'm not just talking about one date, because people will sometimes have quite a few dates before they decide whether they want to, be in that relationship or not. So it's an opportunity to get to know them and to have fun, to have some fun. So avoid these definite no-nos and create a positive impression. Make it an enjoyable experience for both you and your date. This is Linda G. Robert. I'm your Back in the Groove Again coach. I'm here to help you live your best life right now so you can love what you do. Stay tuned for more great videos. And of course, don't forget to subscribe and to like this video. Bye-bye now. Take care.